Hello, we are live on October 17th, 2016, with the Amateur Analysts Weekly AA Meeting Sports Podcast. As usual, we'll run it down, let everyone introduce themselves for the day.
What's up, guys? Ready to go here. We'll talk some League Championship Series stuff. Got the Indians on, playing the Blue Jays in the background. And then we'll talk college football as always.
Hey guys, looking to make bets on baseball this year. Do not listen to anything that I say. I've been absolutely wrong this postseason outside of the Cubs winning 3 games.
Hello, everybody. This Saturday, I spent $160 on 2 shots of Japanese whiskey.
Wait, that number's gone down.
No, it was 170 with tax, and then almost 200 with tip. Unbeknownst to myself, I do not have the ability nor the desire to consume alcohol at that high a price. So if I'm a little bit down, it's because the Japanese, if you want, I'm not even going to say what I was going to say.
All right, and I'm your host, Eric Palmer Jones. We have finally enabled live commenting for those of you that were interested in that contact us about it. So if you're watching, you should be able to live comment. I have the feed up, the comment screen up, so I will see them. Any questions you want to ask, we'll try to get to. Any of our commenters you want to make fun of, I will also get to that first before questions. All right, we're going to start off with the MLB playoffs tonight. We are into both championship series right now, 2 games in on each, with a 3rd game going on right now in the American League. Going to ask the guys to talk a little bit about the division series, all 4 of the division series, and any kind of thoughts on how those went, and then jump into the current series going on. Kyle, did we lose you just now? We did. So, Graham, you're going to start us off on the thoughts on the division series.
Cool. So look at the division series. The only one that I had correct was the Cubs over the Giants. And I've got to say that that game 4 was probably one of the best games I've seen in a long time. The Cubs magic coming through was so much fun to watch. Not really sure why the Giants pulled Matt Moore. Sure, he has injury history and he's got a high pitch count, but he was out there dealing, and you don't mess with that when you're in the playoffs. I think the Jays over the Rangers and the Indians over the Bo Sox and sweeps are very big surprises. I think a lot of people had the Red Sox and the Rangers going pretty far, and for both of them to be out with sweeps is pretty telling that when it gets to October, it doesn't really matter how well you've done in the regular season. It's all kind of what you do in October. I was pleasantly surprised to see the Dodgers take over the Nats. Dusty Baker's an awful manager, so he's a great fit for the Nationals. I was texting with these guys earlier this week and mentioned Dusty Baker has 9 straight losses when they have the chance to clinch, and I can't think of a better team to have lost already in the playoffs in the Nationals. I also want to mention that Bryce Harper is terrible, and he underwhelmed in the playoffs outside of 3 stolen bases.
All right,
Yeah, so I went 2 for 4 on the division series. I did go 2 for 2 on the wild cards. But I think that the one that really surprised me, that I'm still shocked about, I still can't understand what's happening, is the Indians sweeping the Red Sox. I definitely did have the Indians the Red Sox in the World Series. As Graham mentioned, a lot of people did. I was one of them. I still don't know if I can target what it is about that team because their pitching is very good, but as far as that lineup goes, it's not extraordinary in any regard. It's just a very well-managed team. And I think that that's very interesting because it seems to be this is kind of the way that baseball is going. It's not about who has the best players. It's about who has the best manager. You look at the past few years, I mean, every time the Giants have won it has really been because of managerial and teamwork that has won it. And then same thing with the Royals. I mean, their small ball won them a World Series last year. So I think that's a very interesting thing, and it'll be interesting to see if that continues. It was also, although I definitely thought the Giants were going to win, I thought it was pretty awesome to see the Cubs out Giants the Giants. It really looked like you were watching those Giants World Series teams, the way they came back, the way they won those games, the heart that they showed. That was very impressive. Dodgers, I don't think they're as good of a team as the Nationals. I don't think that they deserve to win that series. I don't think that they deserve to be 1-1 with the Cubs, but there's just something about this team this year, and I think it's just the fact that Kershaw is finally coming into his own. He's inspiring the rest of that club by playing up to his ability. And then in the Jays over Rangers, I fully expected that. That was easy call in my mind. The Rangers are the classic team that has a great regular season record but is not built for the postseason.
All right, and Kyle, now that you're back with us.
Yeah, sorry, I lost my visual and audio at the same time. Just real quick, a lot of guys already kind of talked about it, but I think the managing is really what got some teams through to the league championship series, especially the way Dave Roberts used Kenley Jansen and Kershaw in Game 5, bringing Jansen in, knowing that it was the highest leverage situation and having to use him in the 7th. When you think closer, obviously you automatically think the 9th inning, but that's not always the case. Usually the actual definition is you use that guy in your highest leverage situation. And I think Dave Roberts did a good job. He got him in there, and then he knew that Kershaw was having a bullpen day that day anyway, so you might as well throw him out there, try to get Murphy, and then get the next guy. He only ended up throwing 7 pitches, so it worked out. So that was a surprise, and I know the rest of the guys on this podcast are not Nationals fans, especially Graham and Palmer. But I am a huge Bryce Harper fan, mostly because he carried my fantasy team for the majority of 4 years. So I would have liked to see him move a little bit deeper. The Indians, obviously, just like most teams or most people, shocked me. 3 wins in a row against the Red Sox, who I had won it all. I didn't have a good divisional series round, but I am all behind Cleveland at this point. Shout out to Cody Allen, the local Orlando product, who is the star closer for the Indians. Him and Andrew Miller are absolutely handling that bullpen right now. So that's really all I got for LCS stuff.
All right, we're going to keep the same order then as far as Graham starting off goes. We're going to move into the championship series. Start with the NLCS. Graham?
Yeah, so I think some interesting points were made about Roberts and the way that he's managing his pitching staff. While the Dodgers have looked impressive and they've gotten here on, I don't want to say luck, but they're really riding Jansen and Kershaw for the entirety of their pitching. I mean, both of those combined players have pitched 45% of pitches thrown in the postseason, the Dodgers. And if you're looking at the rest of the series against the Cubs, Kershaw's really not going to be able to play until Game 6 unless he has a start on short rest. And Jansen, after having 2 innings yesterday and a big workload later on last week, they're not going to be able to win those games. I mean, they don't really know who's going to be starting tomorrow. They just announced that Rich Hill's going to be starting. And after that, they really don't know who's going to be pitching. And I don't think they'll be able to hang on with the Cubs. The Cubs have a lot of production. Javier Baez has just come in his own and has absolutely looked like a star in the last night. I think if he would have had a little bit of an extra burst from the wind, he had that 2-run bomb, and it's a different story that we're talking about today. But I definitely think the Cubs are going to end up taking the series over the Dodgers unless Kershaw decides that he's going to pitch the next 4 games in a row. Looking at the Blue Jays and the Indians, I gotta speak to Kyle's point. I mean, the Indians look like one of the most complete teams. Their pitching's come along at the right time. They don't necessarily have the best lineup, but to Doobie's point, they're just a team. They're out there with a lot of heart, and they're playing their part of the lineup. One thing that I wanted to note that Andrew Miller is an absolute god. 17 strikeouts and 7.2 innings in the season. And in bad faith for the Blue Jays, he has struck out 10 of the 12 that he's faced. It's unreal. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot of managers use the relievers like they used to back in the day, where you get a starting pitcher to go through 6 innings, and then you get the reliever to come in for the last 3.
All right, dude.
I think that's interesting though. Real quick, I'm just going to touch on it real quick. I think that's interesting. You have guys in the major leagues, that come from the minor leagues. Pretty much those guys who are high stress relievers were were starters all the way through AAA. And then if they wanted to get known and wanted to actually participate on the major league team, they had to go to a long, term reliever. It's kind of what Andrew Miller was. I mean, he was always kind of a guy who would throw, 45, 50 pitches. But you see a lot of guys now who don't really care whether they're a closer or middle relief or starter. When they come up, they just want to contribute. So.
All right, Doobie.
Well, speaking about the NLCS, I was very impressed that the Dodgers were able to win that game yesterday because I honestly thought that they were going to get swept. However, like Graham said, it's really not a sustainable model. Kershaw has finally overcome his demons, it seems, and Jensen's maybe the best closer in baseball. But beyond that, their bullpen is below average, and their starting staff is ripe with guys who you don't seem to trust them. Every single one of those guys seems like a guy that could blow up at any point. Honestly, the best guy on their staff throughout the year since they got him was Rich Hill, and even when he was in Oakland, he was absolutely incredible. But I just don't have faith that that guy's going to come out and throw every game in the playoffs and be effective. And I think that we might see his downfall be tomorrow when he does pitch. When you look at a team like the Cubs, I honestly think Hendricks is their weakest option. And he's pitching lights out. He's the only guy in that staff where I think that's a guy who's ripe to fail. So while I respect the Dodgers and I think they maybe can win one more game, I'd be shocked if this series went to 7. I'd be really shocked. In the ALCS,
we're going AL in a minute. We're only on NL right now.
Graham did AL, but yeah, we'll.
I missed it. So I was helping out. Go ahead then. We'll just combine them. No worries. Go right through it.
Yeah. So as far as the ALCS goes, it's kind of a thing that I think we're forgetting that last year the Blue Jays were down 2-0 and came back and won a series. That being said, they were playing the team that I just trashed and said is not built for the postseason. I don't see that happening. Maybe they can eke out a win tonight, but the pitching staff just does not have the ability to contend with Cleveland's pitching staff or their bullpen. You can have all the power in the world, in my opinion, but when a guy's on, a guy's on. And I don't see the Indians facing a team that can stop that besides the Cubs, because the Cubs have a great bullpen as well as a great starting staff and almost as much power as the Jays. But I think it's a great story. If we could see Chicago versus Cleveland in the World Series, I know that wouldn't be fantastic for ratings, but it would be awesome, I think, just for almost nostalgia and kind of just looking at that series as one that changed a city. I know Cleveland's already been changed by basketball, but I think it would even go further to make them a real sports contender town if they could win a World Series as well.
Kyle?
Yeah, absolutely. NLCS, I just think the Cubs have too much pitching, like Doobie said. They're set up for a 7-game series if they have to get there. You see in postseasons, you play 2 games, you get a day. You play 2 games, you get a day. They're set up with that. Their format rotation it's honestly not fair. And I refuse to believe that the struggles they've had with scoring runs, especially what they did all year and how many games they won, I refuse to think that that's going to continue. It's a feel-good story with the Dodgers and Kershaw kind of carrying them and Ken Jansen doing whatever. I know I just spoke ravingly about how Roberts has managed that team, but I just can't see that holding up. I've got the Cubs in 6, which would automatically to me mean that Kershaw would have to throw Game 5 because I think it'll be 3-1, and he'll have to throw 5 on short rest. Might win that one, and then they'll go 6, and I think the Cubs win in 6. As for the ALCS, being an owner of Stroman for the majority of the year for the fantasy team. I know how hit or miss he can be. I know how big of a game this is, and I know Toronto is just a raucous crowd. But I think the guy throws too many pitches. I think that the Cleveland Indians, as we already talked about, is a really good team that'll wait him out, and they'll hit balls hard. They'll foul pitches off, and they'll get deep into the count. I'm not the most confident in guys like Jason Grilli and Brett Cecil. I'm just not. I think the Indians win tonight. The Blue Jays squeak out a Game 4 win, and then Cleveland wins in 5. That's my personal opinion. I think it'll be interesting to see how Trevor Bauer does with that blister tonight. I think it's going to be really interesting. He sustained it, I don't really know how, but in a non-baseball injury. And then the next guy thrown in Game 4 is a guy named Mike Clevenger, who is actually a product of the Citadel and then Seminole Community College right here in Orlando. I used to watch him throw to my buddy, and he was like 97, 98, but halfway up the backstop, like 15 feet up. He had no idea where it was going. And now 6 years later, he's starting in an ALCS Game 4. It's just unreal. But like Doobie said, Cleveland, Chicago, regardless of ratings, it's going to be really, really cool for the average baseball fan. We know what those two cities have been through as far as baseball fandom, and whichever team wins, that city's going to burn to the ground. There's no doubt about it.
I just wanted to include really quick, I think it's funny to note that the Blue Jays fans are so scared of losing that they're actually trying to make the Indians logo and name illegal to say or have inside of Toronto.
Did you?
I think it's absolutely ridiculous.
The claim did get dismissed.
Did you see that when the Indians' official Twitter put the Blue Jays on blast today? Like, literally was tweeting at them like, you can try your signs, you can try this. Like, why don't you try? Just crying in the dugout. Just like really like all out, like didn't care. There's a few teams that do that. One of them's the Atlanta Hawks, that their social media is just like, they don't care. They just put it, they treat it like a personal account. I think that's awesome that the Indians, in a moment like this, where a lot of PR staffs would be kind of terrified of screwing anything up, is just going for it and being confident in their team.
Yeah, their poll they ran today was pretty fantastic.
I didn't see the poll. What was it?
So the poll was like, what's the next excuse that Blue Jays fans will come up with on why they can't win games?
Okay.
You know, Deflategate, clowns, or whatever. It was really good.
The Brangelina breakup was one of them. That was funny.
So I'm going to go light. As those that have been watching the recent podcast know, I didn't pay close attention to baseball this year as virtue of working full-time in the spring and then having both my teams, the Angels and the Braves, be just terrible. But I do want to say that watching that Cubs win on the Grand Slam was like one of the coolest baseball moments I've ever seen. I mean, that was just something that was awesome to see live. If you weren't watching that game, I feel sorry for you, because that was just something that I'm going to remember seeing for a long time, especially if the Cubs go on to win this whole thing. Awesome moment. Also, a comment I made on the agenda for them that I want to know is, I think the entire city of Cleveland like collectively agreed to sell their soul for sports championships, but like forgot to mention to the devil that they had a football team. So like the miserable Cleveland Browns, as bad as they are, they still have every good player, which are a few of them, getting hurt all year. So like they're just getting left in the dust while the Cavs are winning championships and the Indians are balling out in the playoffs, and I just think that's fantastic. All right.
Real quick, you go first, Kyle.
I think the fans will be okay with 2 out of 3. I know the Browns won't be, but the fans will be plenty fine with 2 out of 3.
I think that, it's a very simple formula. I think that you've seen the Cleveland Cavaliers brought in a superstar in LeBron James, and they won a title. The Cleveland Indians brought in a superstar manager in Terry Francona, and now they're on track to win a title. So I think it's clear that the Cleveland Browns need to hire Brett Bielema, and then they will get their Super Bowl.
See, dude, I thought you were going to say they brought in a star at the trade deadline named Coco Crisp.
Coco.
Kyle, what we call that is good radio transition, since Doobie knew we were done with baseball and moving on to football, and it was just beautifully done on this part, if I do say so. Anyway, any closing thoughts on baseball before we use Doobie's perfect transition?
That's not how you do it.
1-0 already.
Yeah, that's not how you do it, Palmer. You just go right into it.
Well,
So
I
it's kind of
tried.
transition.
I tried it, but Kyle ruined it by trying to comment.
By the way,
Yeah.
apparently Jose Batista dropped a fly ball, and that's how the Indians got the lead.
Yes, he
Beautiful.
did in right field at the wall.
Beautiful. Indians are up in the first. I love it. All right, we're going to move on to college football. We're going to be able to take some time this time instead of having to cram it like last week. So get ready for us to ramble a lot. I hope you're ready for it. Start off as usual with just some general reactions to the week. Some guys will probably mention a few of their picks. I don't think Doobie and I will this week, but Graham might. So let's start it off.
You want me to start or you want Kyle to start? Okay.
Kyle. Yeah, we're switching back to normal rotation.
Yeah. All right, cool. So I had a decent week. I feel like if you can go close to 500 against the spread, you're doing okay. I went 10-12 against the spread, 20-2 straight up. I continue to lead almost 80% in straight up picks, and slowly but surely try to make my way back towards Mr. Doobie in the against the spread record. I have benefited from him going a little bit out on the limb lately. I've kind of been sticking with the lines and trying to bet a little smart. He's been taking some chances, trying to win some money. Can't blame him for that. A couple picks I made this week. I had Q's plus 19.5. Didn't take them straight up. Was the only person to take UNC straight up. A lot of people took them plus the points. And then I was one of, I guess just me and Sirio did West Virginia -1. Did Graham, you do it too?
Yeah, Graham
Yeah, I
had
did it as well.
Okay, I didn't see it on the sheet, but yeah, pretty good week. Like I said, 20-2 straight up. I'm pretty happy with that. Notre Dame continues to be a wreck. I can't believe that a team without Christian McCaffrey and Stanford was able to beat them. There's some serious issues going on there. Yeah, that's all I got for reactions.
All right, Graham.
So I went 12-10 against the spread, which was the best for the week, thanks to an error by Eric Palmer Jones earlier this afternoon, giving me a scare. The one pick that I made that nobody else made was Baylor to cover 35 points. I know we all really want Baylor to lose a game so that the Big 12 is in shambles and they don't make the playoffs, but come on, it's Kansas. This isn't basketball. The other pick that I wanted to react on was the Alabama-Tennessee game. I think we all kind of knew that Bama was going to beat Tennessee, but I didn't think it was going to be an absolute murder like it was. And unfortunately, the game wasn't on here, but I was pretty shocked that Georgia lost to Vanderbilt, which I happen to be going to their homecoming next week, so that's going to be unbearable.
Wait, you're going to Georgia's homecoming next week?
Vandy's homecoming.
Yeah,
I won't be surprised if they have. Yeah, no, I won't be surprised if they have Vandy, Georgia T-shirts, national championship made. Like, wouldn't surprise me.
All right, Doobie.
First off, in honor of moving on to college football, I just opened a nice French Chardonnay from Macon Villageoise. That's not how you pronounce it, in case you were wondering. But, yeah, as far as picks go, I'm not going to take too much time on this. I was not the worst because Palmer holds that title and seems to find a way to hold that title week in and week out. But I did have a bad enough week to where Kyle is creeping up on me further. I have been completely screwed by Mark Helfrich, just like the owner of Nike. He has invaded my mind and my soul, and he has created something within me that I don't know if I can overcome. I picked Arizona State not only in this – I made us put it on the sheet to pick Arizona State, Colorado. I was convinced that a 13.5-point line, that Colorado being a 13.5-point favorite over Arizona State after they had just beaten UCLA away was absolutely absurd. I put my own money on it. I was so convinced that it was going to happen, and then they go out and lose 40-16. I'm disappointed with myself. I also went on a big rant last week about how Tennessee was going to put up a good enough fight against Alabama to where Alabama was going to be exhausted and lose to Texas A&M. Good pick there. That was ridiculous. That was as much of a domination almost as Louisville, Florida State. I mean, that was just like absurd how big the spread was on that game. And I think it shows you what a really good team is compared to a team that is still building towards being a title program. Tennessee has faced the hardest schedule in the nation easily, and they just couldn't sustain another one. They had taken way too many beatings, way too many down to the wire. And Alabama, the thing is, if they had faced that exact same schedule, I don't think they would have had any trouble, and I think they still would have won. So, Bama, that's scary.
So before I get into my own reactions, I did promise I would bring to everyone's attention the live commenters. I missed Michael Serio, who's our usual contributor, saying Justin Turner's a beast for the baseball talk. Giancarlo wanted to know who lost to Vandy. It was UGA, even though he got answered. There's now a conversation going on, by the way, in our live comments between Giancarlo Lecitra and Jake Ponce de Leon, who are two of our fraternity brothers. And they're literally having a conversation about raging and getting drunk in Atlanta this weekend, so that's fun. That's going on in the comment section. I'm so glad I enabled live commenting for this. Onto the games, yeah. I was actually the only one that had Bama covering this. I was shocked about that because maybe it's because I just hate Josh Dobbs in Tennessee and I think they suck. And I just was very ready for Bama to just run them over. I was really sad because I had two straight up upset picks this week that I was so confident in. I went with Wisconsin again, like I did in the Michigan game. They didn't lose that one by much. I thought they had this one. An OT loss there, and then another OT loss for Indiana, which I had to upset Nebraska. That was probably my most upsetting loss on the picks for the week. I really thought they had that overtime game. Once it gets into overtime, you don't know what's going to happen. So I can't get too lost about missing the pick there, but really upset.
Indiana is actually a pretty good team. I mean, if you look at what they've done throughout the season, I think we got to respect Nebraska a little bit here for getting that win.
Yeah.
Because Indiana, they beat Michigan State. They've beaten a few other teams. They kept it pretty close with Ohio State. They're not a bad team, and not to parlay this into Florida State talk, but in Tallahassee and everywhere in Florida State land, everyone is very disappointed about the performance against Wake. But Wake beat that Indiana team pretty solidly, led for most of the game, and won that game. So I think that maybe Florida State fans are being a little harsh because Indiana's a good team, and to go into Indiana and beat them is no small task.
All right.
It's going to be interesting though. It's going to be interesting real quick because Nebraska's 6-0. A lot of people are ragging on their schedule so far. They don't have every chance in the world. They play Ohio State and they play Michigan. I think back to back, right?
They play Wisconsin. They don't play Michigan, I don't believe.
Okay, I'm sorry. So I think it's Wisconsin and Ohio State. I think you're right. It's Wisconsin and Ohio State, whoever it is. Two of the top three back-to-back. So they're going to get their chance. They haven't been in a national championship game since 2001. And, they started 6-0 back in 2001 too.
All right, so before we get into the next topic, I'm going to say to the live commenters that want a around-the-horn style point system. Y'all can do that in the comment section. I will fully tally them up at the end of this if y'all want to do that. So, yeah, y'all have fun with that in the comment section. Award us arbitrary points all you want. I still control the mute button, though. Sorry, Graham. So I might have fun with that. I haven't had fun with that in a while since Serio started talking crazy stuff about forgetting how many games Notre Dame had lost last year. So it hadn't made an appearance since then. It might tonight. We're going to move into the next topic. It's going to be the Clemson scare this week. Clemson really, not even one of those like Clemson hung on and found a way to win. NC State found a way to lose this game, in my opinion. You missed a 33-yard field goal that was for the win going against Clemson at their house. I mean, that was on NC State. Florida State fans know the pain of losing to NC State in a huge upset. I thought for sure it was happening to Clemson this time. So just a little talk about that and key in on, what you think is this for Clemson in the future. Is this a sign of trouble, or is this something they got over their hump and they're going to be able to move forward now?
Yeah, for me personally, and for all of us really, 2014, we saw a Florida State team do something very similar for the first 6 or 7 games of the year, pretty much 14 games of the year, or 13 games until we got to Oregon and actually self-imploded. I think this team's a little different. I would say that I know they've struggled so far through the first 6 games of the year, and Dabo will never admit that in post-game press conference. He'll act like it's the greatest win in the world, which is completely in his power to do. I think they really missed Wayne Gallman. They really, really missed Wayne Gallman. He went out with the concussion. He's not going to practice this week. I would imagine he'll be back for Florida State. But their run game was severely hindered. They put in the backup, and I think he fumbled on the goal line. They snapped it over people's head. My dog is making an appearance in the back of me. And,
okay, I love that dog.
Yeah. But, so for me, I think they're going to be fine. I still think they're going to finish the year undefeated. I love Florida State. I always would love to be a homer, but I'm far from confident about 2 weeks from now. I think their motion, their wide receiver stacks on the left and the right side is absolutely going to kill us personally. I think our defense has a lot of growing up to do, and we'll see what the bye week can do to get healthy. I think just the way Louisville performed against Duke, they are susceptible to one more L. So if you want the ACC to be represented in the playoff, Clemson's your team.
Yeah, I had the same note written down, Kyle. This reminds me a lot of the 2014 Florida State team where they look hungover, they look like they're not really inspired. They've been to the big game before, except Clemson didn't win, unlike Florida State. And NC State's a tough team, regardless of if they play up to their competition or not. Every year they seem to hang around right there, and if it's Clemson, if it's Florida State, whoever it is that's ranked, they end up showing up to that game and playing up to that competition. You got to feel bad for that kicker for NC State that missed that wide open field goal right down the middle. But Clemson, they've gotten the breaks that they need to continue running the table, and I think it continues the rest of this year. And looking at this NC State team, I wouldn't be shocked if they beat Florida State either, since Florida State plays at NC State this year.
Yeah, that's a scary game.
Yeah, I honestly am not too concerned about that game or any one loss for Clemson. I think that NC State is a very, very good team. I don't think anyone's giving them credit for that. As a Florida State fan, I'm as scared about going to NC State as I am about playing Clemson at home. I think that team has a lot of heart, a lot of discipline, and I don't think it's almost fair to say that Clemson lost that game because NC State was playing great. It wasn't like it was, kind of some false plays and stuff like that, and they just gained momentum and got out on a big lead. NC State played a consistent game. If there was no rankings associated with that game, you would have thought that NC State was the better team. So I was impressed by them. But to my point, I'm not as confident in Clemson against Florida State as everyone else is. I think that this team is going to take an L, and I think it will be to Florida State most likely out of this remaining schedule. That being said, I still think this team makes the playoff, and I still think that they're the most likely team to win it in the playoff. I like their receivers. I like their quarterback. I like everything that they show, and I don't trust Washington to win out, and I don't think that anyone's going to put in a one-loss Michigan over a undefeated or a one-loss Clemson that wins their conference, especially after being in the national championship the year before. So let them struggle. Let them get their loss out of the way early, unlike the 2014 team did. Don't let them go in undefeated. Feel the adversity, and then I guarantee you that team will come back a lot stronger when they get to the playoff. I'm not saying that I hope for them to win or hope for them to lose in any other game besides Florida State, but if it does happen to happen in another game, I still think they'll be okay.
All right. Just to give you all an update, with this arbitrary points thing is taken off pretty quickly. We've gotten about 20 different points to and taken away. We do have to have a discussion right now live on the podcast of whether we're going to accept, give, or take from Michael Serio, who is technically a contributor and not a viewer of this podcast, but is viewing tonight. We're accepting them. Okay, so you're accepting them.
I'm really liking the comments that he's bringing.
It's fantastic. It's good stuff on the comment section right now. Y'all keep it up. Giancarlo, it might be game day in Tallahassee. I am looking up the full schedule for that weekend as we speak.
It should be.
so I'm trying to see if there's anything that could really compete with that. I'll give you an answer in a minute. Washington at Utah, maybe just because that's a game they don't ever go to. You also have Nebraska at Wisconsin that weekend, which could be very big. Those are the really only two contenders. So coming off both byes, Florida and Clemson both don't have a chance to impress this week. So the biggest contender, in my opinion, would be that the Nebraska at Wisconsin game. But they've already covered 2 Wisconsin games this year, so I would say that lends favor to Clemson, Florida State.
You also got to think logistically. Kirk's got to fly to the 8 p.m. game if it's somewhere other than where game day is at. If they can, they like to keep it in the same place. Which hasn't happened a lot this year, but if they can, I think that because it's close, and that's a bit of those games that will get the biggest viewership by far.
Without a doubt.
So ESPN likes money. I think they'll put it there. It's a good enough matchup to keep it in Tallahassee. I think that it's a safe bet.
Doesn't Utah play Washington that week?
Yeah, I did mention that one as well.
Okay, yeah, okay.
But you got to think, like, I just can't see that a one-loss Utah. Those are two underappreciated programs. So
yeah, Utah's up at number 19 right now. They'd have to move up. They also play at UCLA, who I know has struggled, but that's not a definite win. If Utah drops that game's out of the equation completely. All right, so we're gonna move it on now to our next topic, and it's gonna be. I don't think it's gonna be a long one because I think it's pretty simple, but I do want to discuss it a little bit. Is Wisconsin the best 2-loss team in the country? And maybe talk a little bit. I mean, what could this season have been for Wisconsin, and what could it still be? If they can beat Nebraska and Nebraska lose to Ohio State, they still go to that championship game. Maybe that's a rematch. It's a rematch most likely with either Michigan or Ohio State. If they could pull the upset, it would really just throw everything into chaos a little bit. So just a little talk about Wisconsin's season, and or if you think there's a better 2-loss team, I'd love to hear it. So start us off, Kyle.
No, I mean, I think Wisconsin's the best 2-loss team. I think we've seen that in the 2 losses they have. They've played close. But I don't put a whole lot of stock into best 2-loss team personally. They have lost twice. For me, it's hard to consider them a quality program. Just like for me, for Florida State, we've lost twice, at least now in 2016. I don't put us near the top, regardless of our strength of schedule, although it has been hard. If they were a really good team, I think they would have finished off. They were up 16-6. They had every opportunity to finish that game. So for me, yes, in the group of 2-loss teams, they are the best, but it's still a 2-loss team. Hornibrook is good. I think they're set up for the future, and Paul Chryst can coach a freaking offense, man. He knows what he's doing. So they've got it going in the right direction. But you're right. At this point, with the way they're playing, same thing with us. They're just hoping to play spoiler. They could still get in the Big Ten championship with a couple big wins and enough things go right. And I think that's obviously what they're going to try to do.
I would have to disagree. I think that Oklahoma is the best 2-loss team in the country right now. They had 2 really tough matchups to start the year with Houston and Ohio State. But they were a team that a lot of people were picking to be in the playoffs. A lot of people thought that they had one of the best offenses in the country, and they're showing that right now. Their offense is finally clicking. They just look really good. And I think – a lot of eyes have already faded away from looking at Oklahoma just because they lost those 2 big games, and there's nothing they can really do. But I got to go with Oklahoma in this. I think Wisconsin's a really good 2-loss team, but I got to go with Oklahoma.
I am also not going to jump on the Wisconsin best 2-loss team train. And it's not because if you look at it right now, they don't deserve that title. If you look at the rankings and everything that they've done, they do deserve that title. But I just cannot believe that the Big Ten is as good as it is hyped up to be. Every year we go through this. Every single year we go through this thing of the Big Ten being a great conference because they start out with all these teams that are undefeated. Because of the major conferences, even including the Big 12, the Big 10 collectively plays the weakest out-of-conference schedule. Now, Wisconsin themselves is the exception to that rule. They played LSU. But as I've said very, very many times before, I think LSU was in a purposeful freefall under Les Miles. And I don't think we can evaluate that team for what it was at that time compared to what it is today. I think if we put those two teams on the field again today, LSU wins that game, and I don't think it's that close. I'm actually going to go with Tennessee. I know that sounds like an absolutely absurd statement considering they just got drubbed by Alabama. But if you look at what they did week after week and how they stayed in games, and even in that Texas A&M game, at Texas A&M, which is markedly one of the hardest places to play in the country, they almost won that game. I like to just put these teams head-to-head. And if I'm putting these teams in a neutral site without it being at night in Camp Randall or at Green Bay at Lambeau Field, and I'm putting these teams in the center of the country to play a game, I'm taking Tennessee over Wisconsin. I'm taking LSU over Wisconsin, and I'm probably taking Florida State over Wisconsin as well. I think we're looking at the Big Ten, and we're evaluating them for what the records are rather than looking at what they will be like at the end of the season.
So hopefully any of our Big Ten friends that do not watch this, because Doobie will get a shitstorm, I'm sure, if they do. I'm not fully in agreement there, Doobie. I mean, I think Ohio State's offense is very impressive. I think Urban Meyer, as much as I think he's not a good human being, is a fantastic coach. And I think he's got their offense buzzing. And, you know, they finally picked it up at the end, but Wisconsin shut them down for most of the game. They shut down Michigan's offense for most of the game. I think Wisconsin's defense allows them that they can compete with any team in this country and win any game they play this year with any team in this country, maybe not Alabama.
I want to clarify that I found that Wisconsin performance against Ohio State to be maybe the most impressive performance of the season in a team that lost. That was incredible, but that was at Camp Randall at night. I still continue to believe that Michigan is an incredibly overrated team, so I'm not putting as much weight towards that. And I'm just saying that I think that Ohio State game was heart, and we might see a downward spiral by Wisconsin from here. If I had to put money on it, I would take Nebraska to win that side of the Big Ten.
And just to kind of mention it while we're on the topic of Lambeau Field, I think everybody here would really like to see a matchup between Notre Dame and Green Bay played at Lambeau Field at night as the only football game to be played that week. I think that would be an absolute treat for the fans and for the sports world, and we can only hope that one day that comes to fruition.
That would be a fantastic effort in futility to see who has the more overrated quarterback.
Oh man. We're not talking NFL this week, but that was a lovely shot at Aaron Rodgers from Doobie there. Oh man,
that was a shot at Deshaun Kaiser as well, who is ranked at every mock draft as the #1 quarterback.
Absolutely.
So that was a shot at both of them.
I just want to.
Brian Kelly would disagree.
Graham just won the arbitrary point competition for the day for getting, I believe that is 100,000 points from Graham, talking about a game about Notre Dame versus Green Bay. So that's pretty much over for the day. We're going to move it on now to the next topic. I gave them a little bit of a challenge. I didn't give any parameters. I said, what is the best story this season that nobody is talking about with no kind of guidelines? And I kind of want to see what everyone came up with tonight. So let's see what they got.
Yeah, I'll keep it simple. Western Michigan, PJ Fleck, row the boat. Row the boat.
Does it count as something no one's talking about if we've talked about it the last 2 weeks?
Boom.
I mean, just because we've talked about it doesn't mean a damn thing.
You're calling us nobody.
Yeah, I called us somebody, which is horribly wrong. But yes, row the damn boat. If you don't know about PJ Fleck in Western Michigan, look them up. They're awesome. Graham, what do you got?
So I went ahead and went with West Virginia. I feel like they're getting a little bit of talk, but nobody's really giving them the credit of being undefeated in a Big 12 where nobody really thinks that Baylor's going to finish it out. Their defenses look strong. They played a Texas Tech team last week that was scoring on average somewhere around 55 points a game and held them to about 17. That's pretty impressive. And I think West Virginia's got a shot at winning that conference, even though there's no championship game and it's, whoever's got the best looking team at the end of the year. But I'm kind of surprised that nobody's really talking about West Virginia and how good they've looked so far.
To your point, Graham, Baylor's got to play that game at West Virginia, which is not an easy place to play. by any means. They'll be burning couches, burning their sisters. It's going to be madness.
Burning meth.
Yeah. So even if West Virginia takes a loss to, say, TCU, Oklahoma, or Oklahoma State, or even Texas, they go into that game with one loss. I still think that they should be favored to win that championship, which furthers my point that the Big 12 is not getting a team into the playoff. But my story that nobody is talking about, and I know we've talked about him before.
If you say Donnell Pumphrey, I'm really pissed off.
Well, you're about to be pissed off. We've talked about this guy before, and it's not the fact that he's having a great season. He leads the NCAA in all-purpose yards and in rushing. But no one is talking about the fact that this guy only needs 1,014 yards to break the all-time rushing record. Ever. He'll beat Ron Dane's record. I know he plays at San Diego State. I know we can't consider it the same. But for a guy to go in for 4 years and perform at that level is no fluke. This kid is the real deal. If I'm a Heisman voter, I'm considering him. I don't think it will be the case at the end of the season. But, to be the all-time leading rusher, which is a pace that he's going to most likely blow away with where he's at right now, which would also mean 2,000 yards on the season. That kid is really unbelievable, and I hope he starts getting some consideration.
I'm right on there with Doobie. That was my story. Donnell Pumphrey at San Diego State. He is an awesome running back. And I agree with Doobie to a point. He plays at San Diego State. Look at the schedule. He doesn't play tough teams. But, guys play there every year and don't do this. It's still damn impressive. Would he have this many yards if he played in the Power 5 conference? Maybe not. But would he also have a better offensive line to run behind? Would he also have probably a better passing game helping him out? That too. So
let's put it this way. Marshall Faulk played at the same school, and he didn't do that.
Yeah.
So you got to give this kid credit. If he was doing this at a Power 5 school, even if this was at Vanderbilt, this kid would be leading the Heisman race right now.
Absolutely. I think he's a guy that ends up with a invite to New York for the Heisman ceremony. No way he wins it, but I think it'd be nice to see him in New York represented, get his story out there. Graham, to your point, I know you and I discussed it before the podcast, but what's craziest about this West Virginia thing is that Holgorsen, among if you I listen to a lot of college football podcasts in the preseason, a lot of knowledgeable people were dead convinced that Holgorsen was done at West Virginia. He would not have his job after this year. They'd find a whole new coaching staff, and the program was on fire. So to see them come out 5-0 is such a shock. It's impressive, but it's also impressive by a team that people expected to be terrible. So I don't know what they've done to turn around. They just went into Texas Tech and shut down a good offense. We know Texas Tech's defense is terrible. That's nothing. But they got an offense, and it was shut down, and that was just unbelievably impressive. To get to the comments again, sorry, y'all. I'm trying to get to y'all when I can. There's a call-out that I want to make, but Doobie left the screen for a minute, so I'm going to wait for him to get back. So we'll talk about that next time. Sorry about that. We're going to move on to our next topic, and it's, as usual, the Heisman leaders. As always, I tell the guys to pick 3 to 5 for this. We'll see what they come up with.
Yeah, my list is pretty similar to last week. I still think it's Lamar Jackson's to lose. Although we're not so impressive against Duke. He did have multiple scoring touchdowns. And like I said, I think he's the one he's above the pack with all the hype he's gotten. It's been absolutely unreal. So I've still got JT Barrett in there because his team keeps winning games. I've also got Deshaun Watson in there because I think he has the ability, especially with this 8 p.m. game, to have another Heisman-like performance against Florida State. Granted, Florida State's defense has not been that impressive, but if he puts up big numbers, I think he's right back in the thick of it. Those are my 3.
All right, Graham.
Got Lamar Jackson at number 1. I'm not going to repeat what Kyle said. I've got Jabril Peppers at number 2. He didn't play this weekend, but damn, did he look really impressive the week before. He plays all 3 areas of the game, plays them well, does enough to help Michigan win games. And that run that got called back, not this week, we just had it the week before, was so impressive. I wish that counted because that was an unbelievable highlight. And then for 3 and 4, I've got Deshaun Watson and Jake Browning. I feel like Deshaun Watson only wins it if Clemson remains undefeated. He hasn't looked spectacular polished this entire year, but team that has a shot at the playoffs, so he's got to be considered. And I think Jake Browning's looked really good, most efficient passer in college football games. The toughest games that he's had to play are behind him, and if he wins out, he's got a really good shot at being invited to the ceremony.
All right, I'm going to go, finally, going to put him, the guy who I've said all along will win the Heisman, J.T. Barrett at number 1. I know he didn't look spectacular against Ohio State, but media is
against Wisconsin.
He plays for Ohio State. You are correct. He does not play for Wisconsin. I'm sorry. But, yeah, against Wisconsin, he didn't look spectacular, and he especially didn't look spectacular against Indiana the week before. That being said, the media has begun to cover J.T. Barrett. Now that they played an 8 p.m. game, his pregame speech that he gave to the team on Saturday is everywhere. This story of coming from a disappointing DUI to being a great team leader is going to be everywhere. And if he beats Michigan, which I am fully convinced that he will, he is going to be on the front of every Heisman voter's mind. The only way that Jabril Peppers has even a chance to beat to win the Heisman is if Michigan beats Ohio State. And at that, and this is what Desmond Howard himself said, Jabril Peppers has to return a kick for a touchdown or a punt for a touchdown in that game to win the Heisman. That's the only way he can do it. He said it perfectly. He said Charles Woodson did it against Ohio State, and I did it against Ohio State. If Jabril Peppers doesn't do it, he's not going to win the Heisman. I know that sounds absurd, but I think that's absolutely correct. If Manti Te'o and Ndamukong Suh did not win the Heisman as defensive players, I know that this guy has a little bit of an offensive role, but as they get into the tougher part of his schedule, that is going to disappear. Harbaugh does not put guys in that position that he knows are not experienced, and I don't think he's going to continue to run him on offense when they play the likes of Nebraska. They don't play Nebraska, but when they play the likes of the really tough teams that they're going to go against. My number 2 guy is Lamar Jackson. I think his chances are all but gone, in my opinion. I know he didn't lose to Duke, but I think we saw that team be fallible, and if they lose another game, he has absolutely no shot at winning. And then I'm going to go at this point right now with Donald Pumphrey as my number 3. I think that you're going to get a running back in there, and I think at this point it's pretty clear that it's either going to be Dalvin Cook or Donald Pumphrey. I think in 2 weeks I may be changing my prediction, even if Florida State loses, based on how Dalvin Cook performs in that game. Because if he goes for even the same yardage that he went for against Wake, I think that you're going to see him jump into the conversation as the best running back in the country, which will get him an invite. But even against Wake, which was the most futile offensive effort we've seen from Florida State in years, he still had a good game by almost any standard that you can consider. He still went over 100 yards rushing, still played a role in the other regards of the game. So if that's his down game other than Louisville and he can come up and play well against Clemson and then against NC State, I think he's in the conversation.
All right, just to get to it quick because this has been twice now, Doobie, that there's been comments about apparently you calling every team a good team. It was brought up earlier. Doobie calls every team a, quote, good team, unquote. And then once again on the West Virginia conversation, the comment was West Virginia is a, quote, good team, unquote. Any response to you calling every team a good team?
I didn't call West Virginia a good team, did I?
I'm going to check the tape later, but I don't know.
I did. You're right. I did. Not every team's a good team. Let me list off a few that are not good teams. Arkansas is not a good team. Arkansas is not a good team.
Is that because they're a great team?
Arkansas is not a good team. Yeah, no, I mean, the teams that we're talking about are good teams. That's why we talk about this. We're not talking about the shitty teams in the NCAA. So I'm sorry if I think that the teams that we discussed that are all in the top 25 are good teams. But when we start talking about the bottom 10, I'll begin to say that teams are shitty. I can be negative. I just like to take a positive outlook.
Would we start talking about the bad teams when we start talking about the most disappointing teams?
We're actually going to skip that this week, but so you're not going to get that chance. We're running pretty late. We're already at about 50-something minutes. So we're going to skip most disappointing and most impressive teams this week unless any of y'all have something you really just want to say badly.
Yeah, I just want to say West Virginia is a good team. West Virginia is a good team.
I wanted to say that I think it's really impressive how Notre Dame has responded to last year's playoff committee looking at quality losses and really going the extra mile to make sure that they get enough of them to be considered for the Final Four this year. It's going to be amazing when they are in the playoffs this year.
All right, we're going to move it along. Best topic of the podcast, in my opinion, as always. Even though my own selections have been a little subpar, I have not been able to do myself justice on this, but it's still my favorite topic because I love talking about people that suck, and it's the reverse Heisman. It is a player usually on a good team, or at least prominent player that on a good team. So I mean, apparently every team. So really, you can go every team, guys. This is a new thing. Every team is a good team, but that just screws up their team's chances and ruins it for them. So it can be week-wise or season-wise, whatever you want to go. Let's start it off.
Yeah, well, for 2 years now, we've been doing this reverse Heisman, and I have never chosen a repeat candidate. I've always kind of gone weekly. But for the first time, I have, and it is Bradley Kaya from the University of Miami. I'm sorry, North Carolina played well, but that defense, if you can only score 13 points on that defense at home, it's an absolute joke. They run the zone read, the run-pass option, whole 9 yards. He doesn't scare anybody. He hands the ball off every single time. He didn't have a whole lot of help with his receivers, but you're the leader of that football team. You know you needed that win because you got a short week. You go to Virginia Tech on Thursday. That was just absolutely embarrassing. Not a great performance from him. And obviously the Canes have lost 2 in a row and could look at 3 with another one on Thursday night in Blacksburg.
So to cut out here, and Kyle, while I agree with most of your points, you did call that a home game for Miami, and I don't truly believe Miami has home games because they don't have their own stadium. So that kind of gets erased out of the equation.
Touche.
But we'll move it on. Graham, go ahead.
Yeah, so my reverse Heisman is actually not a player. This week I'm going to go with Joe Oliva, the athletic director for LSU. Joe thought it'd be a great idea to sit there and whine and complain about not playing the Florida game so that he could get Leonard Fournette back and be healthy when they played Florida because for some reason he thought that they could actually compete in the SEC West. So in doing so, they've rescheduled the game for Florida to play at LSU on November 19th, which is before they play Alabama. And Joe has essentially screwed LSU for this year as well as for next year to make sure that LSU is not relevant and can't make any type of SEC championship game or playoff game. So with him moving the game to the 19th, they now have to play Ole Miss at Arkansas, Florida, and at Texas A&M to finish out the season, which is going to be absolutely brutal. And for next year, because they have to play Florida at Florida instead of in Baton Rouge, they have to play at Florida, at Ole Miss, at Alabama, and at Tennessee, which could be the worst away schedule for any team next year. So I'm going to go with him trying to do something that would give his team a little bit of fight, get Fournette back, and it actually screwed them for 2 years.
So before on the flip side of that,
I got to call Graham out a little bit here because I feel like Graham has been reading some headlines and not actually like following the story. When the fact of the matter is that all of the councilmen and state representatives in that area begged LSU not to take away the home game on the 19th because that is so important to that economy. In fact, in the past, when they did cancel a home game, that local economy lost so much money it almost bankrupted one of the cities, and they begged them to not cancel the home game. So LSU actually went into those negotiations saying, if we can't do the 19th as a home game, we cannot cancel our home game for it. Period.
Yeah.
Also,
and
on the championship game thing, they were told by the SEC if the game did not get played, they were ineligible for the SEC championship game.
right. So to your point about the lost revenue for that game, it's my understanding that the SEC insurance policy would be able to pay out LSU for the supposed money that they would lose for not having the home game. Now, granted, I don't think it's their job to go door to door and pay all the people that live in Baton Rouge all the money that they lost.
Dude,
But
no. I can't give you that argument at all, man. Number one, legally speaking, you're never going to get an insurance policy to pay out any of that money to local businesses. Period. The local businesses will never make a.
oh no, it wouldn't go to the businesses; it would go to LSU.
Yeah, and that's the problem. The
Right,
local
exactly.
businesses are the issue. That's I can't go with that. All right, Doobie.
Well, and the other point I want to make is let's blame Foley just as much. He scheduled himself to play LSU just before he plays Florida State. I mean, and next year, what he's put himself into, and as far as a schedule goes in a row, I don't have it in front of me, but it is just as difficult as what the LSU finish this year is going to be. And that's in a season we don't even know what's going to happen yet. LSU's not going to win a title this year. He knows that. He wants money at this point. Why not schedule that game and get your money? Florida has scheduled it the next season to the point where even if they have a great team, it's going to decrease their chances, and they probably will not win that season, even if they have the best team in the nation. So I think Foley is more of the reverse Heisman if we're naming athletic directors, which is a ridiculous premise in my mind anyways. But if we're doing that, I know they're both good athletic directors, but let's stick off of that and blame the Gators like we always should, even though they're a good team.
Yeah, Aliva's the MVP for me because he's made their schedule awful.
Yeah, I agree. That's not my reverse Heisman.
MVP.
That's not my reverse.
What you gotta do?
My reverse Heisman is it's tough to name exactly who this is, but based on my research, the starting running back for the Michigan State Spartans is L.J. Scott. I am like floored at this stat against Northwestern. First of all, I'm floored at how Michigan State could be as bad as they are. If we had to name the most disappointing teams, they'd be mine. They suck. Everybody out there, I hate them. They're not a good team. And
Well, I want to pause everybody and let's take a moment. Doobie said a team sucks.
yeah,
And it's
okay.
not a good team. We need Giancarlo, or was it? No, sorry, it was Jake Ponce de Leon. Can go deal with his own problems now because Doobie has declared the team bad.
I'm very happy that I found out it was Jake. I couldn't read the comments, Jake. I hope you're ready. But anyways, against Northwestern, they had 23 carries. As a collective group, they had 23 carries for 51 yards. That is so atrocious. They still scored 40 points, which I don't know how that's possible. But their leading rusher was their backup quarterback named Brian Lewerke. He had 30 yards rushing on 7 carries. And they only gave the ball to L.J. Scott, who seems to be their top running back, 3 times. And the leading running back who got the ball the most was 5 carries. Really, I guess if I didn't violate the rules like Graham does and I named a non-player as a reverse Heisman, it would be the head coach at Michigan State, D'Antoni. But that running back crew, and especially L.J. Scott, I've got to give them the reverse Heisman.
Quick question. D'Antoni, after this season, if it continues this way, and I think about 2 more losses if it continues this way, is he on the hot seat for next season?
Not a chance.
Not at all?
Not a chance.
So, what do you think he's like? You think no matter what the record is next year, he's good?
Yes. I think it would take 2 more consecutive years of poor records. He graduated
that's fair.
He graduated all his seniors. I don't know why anyone thought this team would be anything this year. He graduated so much. Let this guy. He runs a program similar to Wake out of necessity. He builds up his guys. He gets them to where they're juniors, and then they play well. Give him a chance. The one thing I will say is scary is this program has always put out great running backs. Always. Le'Veon Bell, you look at a guy like Langford, who I know has been a little bit disappointing. But
He's injured.
Yeah, I mean, but they put out great running backs. And the fact that's what floors me the most is that they only handed the ball to their top running back 3 times.
I'm not in disagreement with you, but I just know how boosters can get. And when you get that successful few years, they get really excited and they want it to maintain. And if something drops off.
But in East Lansing, I don't know if that's the case. It's not.
It might not be. It might not be.
It's not like it's the South. It's the North. They're not the same about their football.
Michigan is not the South. You are correct.
All right, so we're gonna move it right along. We're a little over an hour now. We're gonna move it into the preview of next week. We got 3 ranked matchups that are all SEC matchups, and yes, Ole Miss is still ranked with 3 losses, so that does count. The 3 ranked matchups. The big one, obviously, everyone knows. It's Texas A&M at Alabama, in which Alabama opened as a 17.5-point favorite, which I've not seen this. I don't know this. That's got to be some kind of record for a spread in the top 10 matchup, right? Like, I've never seen something like that in the top 10 matchup. You have Arkansas at Auburn, where Auburn opens as a 9-point favorite. It's ranked matchups. They are ranked now. Arky's well-ranked higher, but it's a 9-point spread for Auburn. That kind of shocked me. I might be, if I had an income right now, I'd be betting the house on Arky to beat that spread. And then finally, you have Ole Miss at LSU with LSU favored by 6. What are the thoughts or any other games y'all have coming up? And Kyle's sound doesn't work, so we're starting with Graham.
Yeah, so of those games, I bet against Bama last week. I don't think I can do it again this week. That's a huge spread for them to cover, but if anybody could do it, it's got to be Alabama. Brett Bielema is going to beat Auburn, and I've got LSU beating Ole Miss just because Ole Miss can't seem to find 4 quarters to put together in a consecutive game. The 2 games that I mentioned to preview that weren't ranked games, Miami at Virginia Tech. I think it's going to be a really interesting matchup to see who ends up taking that side of the ACC. And then I think Wisconsin at Iowa is going to be a really tough road matchup for Wisconsin. Iowa hasn't looked as impressive as they were last year, but I think it's still going to be a tough matchup to see if Wisconsin's really the best 2-loss team in the country.
Am I up or is Kyle back?
Yeah, you're up. Go ahead, Doobie.
Okay. As far as the ranked matchups go, Texas A&M Bama, that's an absolutely absurd spread. I know that the history behind Texas A&M and the history behind Alabama indicates that game may actually be have the potential to be blown out like that. I just don't see it. I think that's going to be a closer game than 17.5 points. I think that Texas A&M plays a good game. I think they've finally gotten over the hump, and Kevin Sumlin saved his job. I don't think they win. Unlike I said a week before, I'm sorry to change my opinion, but I think they keep it closer than 17.5. Arkansas Auburn, I don't care. If I had to care, I'd take Auburn because I don't think Brett Bielema can sustain 2 major victories in a row. That's never happened in his career at Arkansas. He is the opposite of Andy Reid. When you have the battle of fat coaches, I'll take Andy Reid every day of the week. Ole Miss LSU, I think this is going to be a fantastic game. I think that spread is way too big. I see that coming down to the last moment, if not overtime. Ole Miss is a good team. I will stay by that because they're a good team, and I like good teams. And I think that they keep it close, but LSU has too much spirit under Orgeron and wins that game. Non-ranked matchups, Penn State versus Ohio State. I've been saying it since before the season started. This is the one I circled on the schedule. Going into Camp Randall at 8 p.m. and then going into Ohio State having to go into Penn State at Beaver Stadium at 8 p.m. I know this sounds like it's completely out of the question. I will not be putting money on it, and I don't necessarily believe that Penn State can win that game. But I believe if things go the way that they might, We might see that game be a little bit closer than you think. And I think that Ohio State better not be overlooking that, because they might be thinking right now that they're invincible until they play Michigan, and I don't think that that's going to be the case. I think they should really look out for that game quite a bit. And then none of us are talking about NC State Louisville. That is going to be a huge game. I don't know what you guys think. I know they blew us out at noon in Louisville, but I think NC State could very easily win that game. And I'll be very anxious to see what happens in that one. West Virginia TCU is also a great one.
Did anybody say Wisconsin and Iowa?
Yeah.
Anybody say Wisconsin and Iowa? Okay.
Graham did.
Well, never mind. I don't really have much. Like I said, I think that spread is insane. Like we said, Texas A&M actually plays defense, so there's no way that 17.5 will stay there. Ole Miss LSU, I got Coach O keeping his job. I think they're going to have a really good finish to the year, and they're going to LSU finishing strong is going to make that board of directors really think about hiring Coach O full time. And I think he deserves it. If he finishes up and they win 9 games, I mean, I think it's hard to not give him that job. I had Colorado at Stanford as my other games preview, and then I also had Miami, Virginia Tech, just because both teams struggled last week, but they're both still in the race for the Coastal somewhat. So Virginia Tech has a big game at home on Thursday night. Definitely going to be watching that.
All right, so that really brings us to the end. I'll go my quick rundown. I think Bama beats TAMU, Texas A&M by about 50 points because it's Bama, and they're just going to destroy people, despite the fact that their freshman quarterbacks had some trouble and they still win by that much. I mean, the guy's insane. Bama's too good, and they've, Nick Saban was smart enough to hire an OC that can call plays. Cough, Jimbo, cough. I am going to call out Doobie because I think he's trying to purposefully mush Arkansas now because he secretly still loves Brett Bielema as much as always. And he tried it last week, and he talked bad about him, and they won, and he knows it, and he's not going to continue to talk crap until they lose again because he thinks he's got something going now. I see that happening already, so I can't wait for them to keep winning, and Doobie just trashes them every week. Then they win. It's going to be fantastic. Ole Miss LSU, I think Edo leads into like a 20-point victory. I think Ole Miss, now they've lost 3 games. Their SEC year's over. Their year's over. They might collapse a little bit at Death Valley, which is easy to do. And now for the brand new segment, just to close this out right at the end. Wait, I got. Let's see, one more to put on it. So I'm going to go the arbitrary points that were awarded by our viewers in the live comment section. I do have a new rule after tonight. It was not said previously, so it will not count. Only 1 point plus or minus increments will be allowed after this absurdity. But there were at least, 6 points taken away or given to each person. Coming in last night is Kyle Meredith with -2. Rough night for him. Coming in second to last is myself with a +3. Doobie, right at the buzzer, beat me to +4 to get second place tonight. I get a -1 for setting rules, so I'm down to +2. I'm still in third. It doesn't change anything. And Graham is the winner tonight at – so make sure I get this right. If I'm wrong, I can be corrected. I counted the zeros very quick in my head. But 1,000,004 on the plus side.
Wait, so essentially, Graham beat me by 1.
That is
1
correct.
million.
Unless it was 100. Yeah, Graham tied you without the 1 million point give for talking about Notre Dame versus Green Bay by our own contributor Michael Serio, which I really don't know if should count, but since I didn't set the rules, it flies.
How did Graham not get negative making an AD his reverse Heisman?
Because
I don't know, man.
know
Hey, it's on the viewers, man. It's on the viewers, man. I don't control it.
I don't think you understand how big of a following Notre Dame and Green Bay have throughout this wonderful country. I mean, if you just say one nice thing about them.
Because I haven't used it in so long, Graham is muted for the rest of this. because I haven't used it and I had you there, and we got to get off the air.
I'm actually going to have to agree with the standings. If I was voting arbitrarily, I would vote Graham as the top guy. I thought that comment was accurate, and I thought it was good. Graham, you did a good job. Everybody did a good job. Everybody on this podcast is a good podcaster.
I'm giving the Doobie,
cool, so
Doobie the win for that. I'm giving Doobie the win for that. No, wait, what happened to your mute? No, you don't. You
Yeah.
cannot mute yourself?
Palmer has no power.
How do
Palmer
I not
has
have
no power?
How do I not have full control over the mutes? By the way, if you're still watching this, I don't know what you're doing with your life. It's done.
This
The
is
podcast is over.
democracy.
We're just rambling at this point. There's got to be a way I can fully mute you.
I can mute.
Can't fully.
We can all mute him.
Wait, Graham, can you unmute yourself right now?
Nope, because I keep muting him.
How do I have no control? Is the whatever?
You just gotta have a quick. You gotta have a quick trigger finger. All of us mute Graham.
I have so much less power now that I realize I can't fully mute the rest of this podcast. Anyway,
That's
if you're
brutal.
still watching, I love you. I don't know why you are, but we all love you.
The
I got
NFL is
another
rigged.
-1. Shut up, Graham. We're done.
Go
We're done
Bolts.
for the night. Good night, everybody.
Go
Any closing
Bolts.
comments real quick? Run it down. Kyle, closing comments.
Not much. Noel's on a bye week, so I'll just be watching all the other games. Going on a cruise this weekend. Gonna go eat a
That's
pizza.
boring. You're
See
boring.
ya.
You're done. Graham, closing comments.
The NFL is
You're
part of
done.
the Illuminati.
Boring.
And Russell
Doobie,
Wilson is
closing
no
comments.
Matty Ice.
Go Bolts.
I like it. Doobie wins. Good night, everybody.